Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are crime dramas. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the season 3 premiere of Leverage Redemption. Great season premiere. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. So the Leverage crew end up doing what they always do. Find themselves in these interesting predicaments where it's like you'll be doing one situation and then will sometimes find themselves in another predicament where they try to like save the day or help. It's always funny how those situations happen because they're supposed to be in Paris on vacation because Sophie was looking for a present for Astrid because she had to make up for the one that, I accidentally gave my stepdaughter who works for Interpol a stolen ring or something I stole from like 20 years ago. And it's like, how did I know that it was stolen? And, I forgot about it. So how did I even, so... And I love that even both Hardison and Parker bring up the point of like, it's kind of interesting how your dynamic with your stepdaughter is the exact same dynamic you had with Nate. You have this complicated relationship with someone on the other side of you, like you're on the criminal side, that person's on the law side. It's like, it is interesting that you find. I don't think I even thought about that last season at all, but it's like it is a funny how Sophie constantly finds herself in that type of dynamic. So. But yeah, basically it was them stealing this owl. I can't remember if that was supposed to be the president because it's from like kind of a Russian gangster dude named Gustav, which I also love just the camera work at that opening section and stuff like that, where it's just like, okay, you're focused on like Hardison and Elliot doing a thing in the background. He goes in a room and closes the door, and then the camera continues to follow Hardison. It's stuff like that. Obviously there's cuts, but they kind of hide the cuts. In between, it almost looks like a one shot. It's like obviously it's a fake one shot, but I love, like, once again, sometimes I can get in my cinematography and film nerd bag in those capacities. So I'm like, that's some neat camera stuff doing. The show does neat and fun stuff like that all the time. But yeah, they managed to knock out some people, steal the egg the owl, no problem, until Gustav happens to walk in, sees it's stolen, and then like starts popping off. Our group tries to run. They have to decide like, all right, well, we need to ditch the van. Well, they don't have the truck, was it taco truck? Is that what it is? They don't have it because Brianna has it because she's with Harry and Becky checking out colleges because Brianna's trying to figure out whether college is for her or not. And I think that's going to be the main overarching theme of this season of, changing, and what's kind of next type of situation in a lot of ways, which I think it's kind of an interesting theme, but we'll talk about that later. But yeah, they're running away from these guys. Elliot has to get rid of some really, really great flour. He's like, oh man, it's such a waste to use this. Uses it on the guys' cars, and then proceeds to beat them up systematically, gets cut, and I love the entire episode. It's like, I'm going to be a little half step behind. I'm slowly, I'm not getting stitched up. I'm just taping up the wound, and I'm continuing to bleed. So holding out as long as he did the entire episode is pretty impressive. But it's like, they knocked out the guys, and then made their way to somewhere. It's like, okay, we can lay low here, ditch the van. It's just kind of a low-key party, a lot of people, we can hide, and then they find themselves neck deep in another situation because they meet this guy, Mike, played by Jack Coleman. I saw the name Jack Coleman, I was like, why does that name sound so familiar? And lo and behold, I'm like, hey, it's HR from Heroes. Isn't his real name Noah? Because he's always going to be horn-rimmed glasses to me, so I can never remember, but I want to say his name is Noah. But yeah, that's I think he probably, I was like, that might be the first thing I ever saw him in that I remember was Heroes. But either way, but yeah, they find themselves in a situation where, that just seems like a party of rich people and stuff. But then it's like, well, there's criminals here. There's government officials from different countries and stuff like that. There's a lot of armed security, different people, like armed security from different countries. It's like, what is it? It feels like a who's who of gatherings. And it turns out Mike is a big time businessman. He runs like a hot wings chain like around the world or whatever. Well, I think it's in the US and maybe here in whatever the case may be. But his now most recent export is water. And his whole deal is he's stealing water from like towns and their aquifers and selling it to other places. And that's where Isabel comes in, because she's from a town that's being literally drained dry by him. He's like even selling the water back to them in trucks, and so like they have to pay for water that's rightfully theirs. So it's like that's effed up, and because it's in gallons and trucks, they're not getting all the water, they're getting some of it, and obviously he's probably going to be knocking it up a large premium price just to f them over, right? Water that's theirs by right. So. But it's like, yeah, it's an on the fly situation. It's like, all right, we're learning what this whole situation is. Uh, Mike, because I almost want to call him Jack, want to call Hacker by his real name. But yeah, like he's kind of a terrible person, because he's talking about, because I think Sophie had made the point of like, oh yeah, the Russians, they do the whole like, type of situation, because the person she's pretending to be. And he's like, well, we're not that bad in America yet. And he's just kind of like giddy about the point about like, oh, we're kind of excited. Don't worry, like you also get to that point at some point. And Sophie's like, is he joking? And Ellie's like, I don't know. So all the while that's going down, Hardison and Parker have to like go through a tunnel system that's got like all the skulls and bones and stuff. And Hardison was trying not to breathe. Obviously, he does not do well in vents and tight spaces. Once again, always being the irony when you have a girlfriend who lives for vents and tight spaces. You who's not comfortable with it, with your girlfriend being super comfortable with it, I think it's beautiful, and just once again just makes them the beautiful oddball couple that they are. But Hardison's kind of dealing with some stuff where he's just like, and Elliot seems to know. I don't know if Sophie knows, but Elliot definitely knows. Like, oh, you're going to talk to Parker about that? And Parker's like, about what? It's like, oh yeah, Brianna. Yeah, we'll just kind of focus on her. But he talks about not it's like he wants, it's like, oh, we should, things, what's next, and kind of changing and stuff like that. Like, is there something else? And Parker's like, oh, I think about that all the time. He's like, really? You do? She's like, yeah, I think about jumping off a crane. I think about jumping off this. I think about jumping off any high up apparatus. And it's like, well, that's not what Hardison was talking about, but still. I also love the eyes wide shut moment they have with that guard. They're like sending him away. It's like, oh yeah, like, eyes wide shut. And he's like, oh, Kubrick's best film. And Hardison's like, no, that's not his best film. And Parker's like, no, I mean, top 5. I'm curious, does Hardison agree with the top 5 at all? Definitely not. Definitely he was like, what? You guys, what? Best film? No. Because didn't Kubrick do The Shining? I think probably a lot of people would say The Shining would be his best film, wouldn't they? I should also note, I am not a film nerd, so I don't really know movies that well, so I'm not going to be like, oh, what is Stanley Kubrick's top 5? Other people are going to answer that for you. I'm not a movie person, so like I can't answer that, but I know like, oh yeah, The Shining is probably, I think people probably make that argument. It's probably one of his, I don't know. Once again, not that I had that film conversation, but I just thought that was cute. And then, yeah, because they're trying to get him to go to this quote-unquote fake orgy of being like, oh, yeah, you have to dress up, put on this dog mask, because they're really like, oh, they like your face, they like your eyes, and they think you're a right fit for your orgy. So, like, okay, go ahead to the red room, and just like Hardison and Parker looking at each other, being like, he nasty. And just like, I love how much of a well-oiled machine that they are. But yeah, there's also this cute thing when Hardison was like talking to Parker. She's like, all right, I know you're hiding something from me. He's like, well, I kind of don't want to keep doing this forever. And she's like, what, like stealing and stuff? He's like, no, like the criminal stuff. He's like, I'm perfectly fine with that. It's like, it's way too late to be having like wanting to like have a heel turn at this, not heel turn, but like turn to the good side of things after all the, it's like, yeah, I enjoy this. Because he's like doing this and doing that. He's like, it's fun. She's like, you don't like going and jumping off of stuff and stealing things? He's like, no, I do. He's like, the stealing stuff, I really enjoy it, but I only love it because I get to do it with you, Elliot, Sophie, Brianna, and I mean obviously Harry sometimes when he's around, so. And it's like, oh, what about this? It's like, only like that because I mean you love it and I love you, and so that's the only reason why. I was like, oh, it's really sweet. She's like, so fine, we'll do what you love. And he's like making these microtransactions where he's basically adding like $2.70 to some accounts. That's all for like Sophie getting inside of Mike's head and making him think that his way of connecting everyone's accounts through him and stuff like that, it was safe, and he thought it was safe, but they were trying to make him feel like, oh no, like actually like your tax, what is it, maybe the IRS or whatever. He's like, yeah, the tax people are just like looking and trying to make sure the accounts are like, it gives them an end to be like, okay, we got the right account to be looking into stuff. So it was just a mess with his head. And just like you have Parker not really getting it and just being like, oh yeah, sure, okay, which I think is so hilarious and funny. But regardless, I also love that Harry is he's at, he gets put on handling things stateside, looking into stuff. And I love the whole like he's like, yeah, how you think I'd look with a beard? And she'd be like, oh, unfortunate. Which I'm like, well, I know Noah Wiley has a beard for the pit, so I don't know if like he needed that aesthetically for the pit or not, because he does shave it later on. So I'd assume like either he filmed this after he finished filming the pit, or maybe like this was before the pit. Maybe some of Harry's scenes are like, because he shaved, like maybe some of that's after he'd already finished the pit. I don't know. I'm so curious what his what the production schedule was like, because I'm assuming like Noah Wiley's not going to be in the season long because he's in the pit and he's like in every episode he's kind of like one of the main characters, maybe like the main character of the main characters. Obviously, I've heard nothing but great things about it, but obviously I don't watch a lot of medical dramas, so I haven't seen it. So, but yeah, that's just kind of something that popped in my mind. He's like, no, I look good with a beard. He's talking to a guy later and be like, oh, like, do I? It's like, oh, you gotta, so it's about maintaining it. But like I said, by the end of the episode, he shaved. So I was like, oh, I guess like Sophie probably gave him so much guff about it. Maybe just other people did as well, and maybe just the whole like maintenance of it all made him go like, all right, I'll just shave it. So I also love the whole thing where he had oh god, what was that place he had to jump over the fence? I forgot what he was necessarily doing there. Oh yeah, because he was looking for like a shipping container, because it was about like where the water was being stored, the tankers that the water was being stored or whatever. I don't think it was a shipping container, it was just a tanker. But he went there, and for whatever reason, he's wearing a mariachi outfit, and he's like, oh, I'm missing the cake. I'm like, how did you get, I mean, we know like Sophie told him like, hey, you've been with us 3 years, con your way in there. I'm like, what did you actually do? I'm so curious. But yeah, Harry had learned that Mike had already sold the water to like Saudi Arabia and country, somewhere in Saudi Arabia. And so it's like the situation of, even because Sophie's plan was, we're going to blow up this auction and try and get it shut down. But like that deal's already going through. So it's like, well, what do we do in that regard? Because we got to stop his entire operation if we want to like save the water from Isabel's town, because even if we shut this down, that deal's already going through and his enterprise will still keep going and he'll just do it somewhere else. So we need to shut this down. So with the little microtransactions, they were able to convince people like, well, Mike to be like, oh my God, this way of handling things isn't safe. So people were going to have to hide their physical assets that they have with them in the vault, because the vault held nothing but Isabel. And Isabel refused to leave because she wanted to stay and get some information about his corruption. She wanted to prove that he's breaking the law, because all these people are tiptoeing the legal route. It's just, and as Parker puts it, it's like, no, like, technically these people aren't doing anything illegal. It's just that the law sucks. It gives them the wiggle room to do some shitty stuff. And so, and it's not just Mike, it's also the other, like I said, these corrupt government officials, as well as these criminal people that are here. But we also had the wrinkle of Gustav showing up. So you're like, oh, okay, that's a... And Sophie played that really gutsy where she went up to him. It's like, yeah, you do the one thing you're not supposed to do in like a con situation, and you just say hi to the person. And it's like, well, he didn't, because he hadn't gotten the security footage yet. They hadn't sent it over because he was immediately like, oh, we got to track this vehicle. So he hadn't seen what Sophie looked like yet. Like when they made their escape, he didn't really see him. They saw what Elliot looked like because he beat up some of those guys. I think, in fact, one of the guys that was with him was, I don't think they were the guys that he beat up in the car. I think those were some of the security people back at the auction house or whatever that he beat up and dragged into rooms and stuff. I think that's who he was referencing, but maybe it was some of the people from the car. Either way. I also love Elliot, Parker, and Hardison dealing with the big guy, because Elliot's like, dude, I'm bleeding and you want me to beat up that big dude? He's like, that's effed up. And Parker's like, oh, well, maybe that's, well, if you're not excited doing what I'm doing, maybe you should do what Elliot does and beat this guy up. And Hardison's like, wait, what? And she handcuffs Elliot so he can't fight. And he's just like, And I love Hardison's like, you got any advice? He's like, dude, that's why we deal with our emotional baggage stuff before we go in jobs. He's like, no, I'm not talking about that. He's like, I'm talking about fighting this big dude after he got knocked down. And I was like, oh, he's going to whoop your ass. And, Hardison's trying to do his thing, but still getting his ass whooped. And Elliot's like, no, guard, go for this head. And it's like, yo, you might want to duck. And then he goes for like the Spock, like, pinch. And it's like, don't do that. That's not going to work. So Elliot like breaks the thing, and Hardison's like, okay, cool. You could have done that the entire. You could have broke free at any point in time. But for him, it's like, and dude, I'm woozy. I'm losing blood. Like, I love the teamwork they did, because it's like, well, especially because Elliot's like, yo, my left hand's not really working, my left arm's not really working, but yeah, they did well as a combo team. I was like, yeah, that's actually pretty damn dope. Like, so it all worked out, and ultimately they convinced. Well, Gustav showing up, and obviously Sophie playing the instigator as well as translator, being like, oh yeah, like those thieves, they showed up here. Gustav's thinking like maybe they work for you, but maybe those thieves showed up here still. And he's like, no, Jack, I was about like his advisor. Mike's like, no, that can't be. And then they go to the vault and find that everything seems to be there. But then Sophie reveals the hole and was like, oh my God, they snuck in here. Gustav gets the camera footage, but it turns out it's Isabel. Like, he digitally replaced Sophie's face with Isabel's. So now it's kind of connecting it. And now Sophie's able to turn everything and be like, oh, Mike, you propagated all this stuff. You pretended like this was all this, but you all playing so that we'd all put our assets in this place for you to steal. He's like, no, it's not like that. And Owl is there. But Mike had already seen the owl Sophie having. He's like, oh my God, it was her. She's already gone, and he's left to deal with everything. So in the aftermath, everyone's trying to like get their assets out back into their vehicles. Sophie giving her stepdaughter a present, being like, yeah, here's all this stuff, some corrupt government officials, and obviously Mike's whole operation blowing up in his face. They are even like one of his places got caught on fire, because it's like, yeah, Gustav probably did that, but that's also being viewed as like maybe insurance fraud, so that's also being held against Mike. And Astrid got like a commendation. Everyone was like, oh, that's awesome, until she was like, by Sterling, and then Parker's like, ugh. And Elliot's like, seriously? She's almost like, what? I mean, it's like, it's her boss, So, that's kind of good. They're just like, don't mention Sterling's name. That's invoking evil around us. Our complicated history with Sterling, your complicated history in particular. But either way, I was so curious to see what Hardison was going to talk about, like what was bugging him. I mean, besides the whole like, yeah, I want something a little different. I don't want to keep doing this forever. For him, it's like, it's the thing of, it's always case after case. It's like, yeah, we're doing good, but for him, it's like he's trying to find not the, I guess, the excitement of it, I guess, to some extent. Because at first, he's like, we're kind of always, it's kind of like a homicide detective. Your job will always be, you're stepping in after the fact. Maybe you can prevent some future stuff from happening, sure, but this one thing or these things that happen, you get called in after the fact. So I was wondering if Hardison was coming from the perspective of, yo, I want to kind of be preemptive and proactive on like, because he's like, people like this, like, our job is to go after the people who others can't go after. That's kind of our whole deal. And it's just like, yeah, who I used to be in the past, all I cared about was being the best hacker. That guy, who was intelligent, sexy, and awesome in every way. He's like, yeah, that's all I cared about, but that's not who I am anymore. It's time to move on from that being the main motivation behind like defining who I am. Like I said, I thought he was going to go from the perspective of, we need to take down these bad guys before they even get to this type of point. Because it's like, yeah, like, we helped Isabel with this situation, but it doesn't take away all the damage that Mike had already done before then. We helped out Isabel and her town, sure, and stopped him from creating future villains, but future victims, but all the previous, that's why I was wondering if like Hardison was going to go like, we got to be a little more proactive in a way. I didn't know if that was the route he was going, but it's like, yeah, it's just him figuring stuff out. And he had that heart to heart with Elliot where he's just like, yeah, man, it's just like, another thing is, I don't know if I could. That's why I kind of chose not to be in the field. He's like, I don't want to be in a situation where I have to keep seeing like someone take punches that were meant for me, And he's also like, I'm tired of seeing it, you get hurt and stuff. You're just like, man, that obviously it's just like Hardison and Elliot, that the broship that they have. But things changing where it's like all that for Hardison wants to take 6 months to kind of figure some stuff out, kind of step away like Sophie did. I think referencing, back in where she was going most of season 2 of the original show, just figuring stuff out. So I think, Hardison wants to do a similar thing. Sophie, that identity that popped up, she got nervous about. I'm like, what is that? Is there some like BS tied to that? And it's like, no, it's her dating profile. And then Harry's like, hey, you're dating? I'm dating too. We could be dating app buddies. And she's like, no. He's like, come on, give me tips for my dating profile. They're kind of putting themselves out there, specifically Sophie. So I'm curious to see how that turns out. Will it be someone significant? Like, will we just see her constantly like dealing with guys? Because it's a very hard thing dating, considering, well, very few people know who you really are. I mean, obviously it took a long time for Nate to find out your real name. I mean, you had to, because he wasn't around when she revealed her name to everyone between season 2 and 3. And then he kind of had to work on it. He's like, I'll figure it out, So I'm curious, it's that thing of who do you present yourself as when you've kind of spent so much time as other people, but coming to terms with a lot of who she was and who she is, I'm sure obviously plays into like her, mending fences with Astrid as well. So, it's kind of a perfect time to kind of move on from who you were to, leave that person behind, leave the past behind. And it's like, you can't forget it. Obviously, don't like pretend like it didn't happen, but you're entitled to move on. So, and, Parker's got the whole issue of, she's like, I thought everyone was done changing, but it's like, no, like people kind of change at their own rate and stuff like that. And obviously for Parker, it's like, the feeling stuff, I hate that. She's like, even this whole conversation is making my skull itch and scratch. So yeah, but it's like, yeah, I can wait, 6 months. That won't be too bad. I like waiting for Hardison to figure stuff out. And even she herself is probably going to end up changing along the way without realizing. I mean, look at how much she's grown and changed over the course of the original show, but even where she is right now versus who she was at the beginning of the series when the team first met her. She's grown and changed so much over the years, obviously. But she thought she was done changing, and I doubt that's the case. I think that's going to be part of her journey this season, is thinking she isn't changing while changing at the same time. Like, that's the funny thing. Like, you can think like, no, I've done enough growing, done enough changing. I'm solidified in who I am. But it's like, yeah, I mean, people kind of change on a daily basis. Like, sure, a lot of who you are, the core of who you are might stay the same, but even then it's like different stages in life. You want different things out of life. You want to be a different person, so there's a lot to that. So we'll see where that ends up going. I also love the whole thing of like, oh, pretzels, they're perfect. And her dragging Hardison over. He's like, wow, you've been working out. She's like, yeah. And it's like, wow, that's sexy. So yeah, just fun to have leverage back. This kind of snuck up on me. Did not know it was back until I just haven't been keeping up, like checking in on it like I should. And I just happened to see like it's on the homepage of Prime Video. I'm like, what? Wait, when did this? It came out today. Obviously, I'm recording this like a day later. This should start going up tomorrow. Even if I don't get through all the other 2 episodes, and if I just get through this one, at the very least, this will go up tomorrow. But either way, I'm excited to have leverage back. I'm excited to see where what cons we get into, what bad guys we deal with, and where the overarching storyline ends up taking our characters along this journey. What journey they go through in this kind of overarching, character development for them in this season. If there will be like a overarching story, sometimes there is for the season. Sometimes, it's like a very background thing until the very end. But we'll see how this season plays out. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.